You're listening to the Paralegal Real Talk, contributing series on the Paralegals on Fire podcast, and I'm your series guest host, Linda Odermatt. We call this contributing series Paralegal Real Talk because when we get together, I spill the tea about where and how things are changing in the legal profession while sharing my perspective about those changes. As various jurisdictions wrestle with the access to justice crisis, it has become evident that they need resources and policy templates to create programs that not only align with the other jurisdictions, but that have programs that can work together and learn from one another. And that is where IAALS has exhibited such amazing vision and foresight, not only tracking the various programs, but their elements and then analyzing those unique elements to recommend best practices for jurisdictions starting their investigations into these different programs. On today's episode, I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing Michael Houlberg. Michael is the Director of Special Projects at IAALS, focusing on family justice and regulatory reform work. He's also promoting greater accessibility, efficiency, and fairness to everyone involved in the legal system. Michael leads IALS's Allied Legal Professionals Project, where he is working to grow and standardize limited licensed legal professionals that are akin to nurse practitioners. Michael joined IALS in 2018 after working for both private and nonprofit organizations. He started his legal career working with Towards Justice, a Colorado nonprofit organization that fights for workers who have experienced wage theft. Houlberg then transitioned to workers' compensation defense with Pollard Miller, LLC, where he litigated claims on behalf of employers and insurance companies. Desiring to return to nonprofit work and help provide others with greater access to the courts, Michael joined the National Center for State Courts and worked on projects that involved the implementation of a statewide case management system and the creation of a juvenile court specifically tailored to youth involved in gun violence. He's excited to increase the reach of his work to both state and federal courts through his work at IALS. Michael also volunteered as a court-appointed special advocate for CASA, which involved advocating for the safety and well-being of children who have been removed from their homes due to abuse and neglect. Michael graduated from the University of San Diego School of Law in 2015, and he received his Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Brigham Young University. He's also a member of Psi Chi, the International Honor Society in Psychology. We are so lucky to have Michael here with us today. Thank you for joining us, Michael. All right. Well, Michael, thanks again so much for being willing to give your time and come on this podcast with me. Wanted to just start and ask you to kind of talk us through what is IALS and what is its mission?
Yeah, so IALS is a national research organization. We're located at the University of Denver, so we're based in Colorado, even though I personally live in Salt Lake City, Utah. Um, with our mission, so we innovate and advance solutions that make our civil justice system more just. We believe justice for all must be a reality for everyone. And so with that, our work comprises of, as a research institute, beginning everything with research, whether it's our own research that we're conducting or gathering other empirical research that others have done, and then bringing together people, diverse groups of experts who are, whatever topic or issue we're trying to tackle. We bring together those experts. We talk through the research, we work through a solution, develop whether it's like a model or recommendations, and then we work with states or work with courts, again, depending on what the issue is, to implement this model or recommendations that we've created. And then on the back end, we know that not everything we do the first time is perfect. So we go back and we collect data and revise the recommendations or the model as need be, depending on what the data tells us.
So I guess so if you're doing that kind of evaluation on a long-term process, I'm assuming then you go back to the same participants to see if they have any additional comments, or am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, no, that's correct. And it all depends on what the project is. So if we've like right now we're working on a new model for like divorce and separation cases.
Mm,
And so it wouldn't just we part of it would be talking to say judges, attorneys, um litigants, so people who've gone through the process, asking how it's going, whether it's surveys, focus groups, whatever it may be. So we do that, but we also collect data on looking at what the self-represented rate is, or we look at, how many people are coming back for like
mm,
post-decree motions to revise what their like parenting plan is. Thing that's just one example, but so we collect data in a number of different ways to get the most whole picture we can on, what that state or court is doing.
love that. So I guess my next question is, you kind of talked about a holistic approach to these different programs, but how is IALS leaning into the access to justice space specifically?
Yeah, so from IELTS' inception, we started back in 2006, and from the beginning, our focus has been on improving the civil justice system. As I mentioned in the very beginning, our mission is to make the civil justice system more just, and so everything we do is to improve that access to justice crisis that we have. Most recently, one of our biggest initiatives, and I think that applies most to your listeners, is our regulatory reform initiatives. And so these are things like the regulatory sandboxes
Mm,
that Utah has going right now and that Washington is creating, or the alternative business structures from Arizona, community justice worker programs, allied legal professionals. I'm happy to, get more into any or each of those if you'd like.
mhm.
But that's really where these, what we're seeing, like some of the biggest movements right now in the legal space are around these regulatory reform initiatives because they directly hit at the access to justice crisis, understanding that the current model um, it's just not working. It's
Yeah.
just not enough. And so that's like some of our newer things, but I mean, like I said from the beginning, we really cover the gambit. So you look at law school, what students should be learning to be prepared as much as possible for practice. We're looking into that. How students should be tested to ensure
Mm,
competency.
mhm.
Is the bar exam really the best identifier of competency? Spoiler, no.
I knew
But
that, by the way.
yeah, I know you know that, especially with Oregon. Um, but so we're looking at that. We look at the hiring process. So, right, you go from law school, go from the bar exam, now the hiring process. What law firm should really be looking at in a person's resume, um, our background when hiring. It's not just about their law school ranking or how many times it took for them to pass the bar exam. Those aren't the best identifiers. We've learned that what employers value the most for new lawyers is based on like professional competencies and characteristics. And these are things that current hiring criteria just really do a bad job
Yeah,
prioritizing.
it's true.
Um, yeah, and then I mean I can go like we looked then at attorney practice and making that better, utilizing tech, not just AI, but other technologies to make and improve efficiencies. We look at ways courts can improve what they're doing. I mentioned a project we're working on, family law. And, we know that the adversarial system is not where family law should be. It's a terrible place
Yeah.
for family law because it focuses on rights and wrongs, not the best outcomes for families and children. It doesn't foster a collaborative, like problem solving that parents need post divorce.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of different things that are within the legal profession right now that can be improved on that we're trying to touch each and every one of those.
Yeah, it's such a broad swath of things that you guys are doing and
Yeah.
focusing on because the problem is so big, right?
Right.
Um, so let's go. I think my question is next is just we were already starting to talk about the different programs that you guys are working on and initiatives, but Let's focus on a couple of the key ones because you mentioned the sandbox, you mentioned
Mhm.
community justice workers, the licensed allied legal professionals. Maybe in those spaces, how are you getting after those specifically? What are the key components of kind of those programs?
Yeah, so I'll start with our Unlocking Legal Regulation project or initiative that we started back in 2019. So I'm sure you've touched on this in um, other sessions of this, but it's well documented that the vast majority of not just low income, but low and middle income Americans don't have access to affordable legal help when they need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of the crux of this Unlocking Legal Regulation project. And so we know that we have an antiquated and overly restrictive system for regulating the delivery of legal services. And that's just one of the contributing factors that has led to this access problem. And so that helped us launch or was one of the reasons why we launched this project. And so we focus on rethinking how the legal profession regulates the delivery of legal services. So that could be the unauthorized practice of law rules,
Hmm.
or the rules of professional conduct. And so so going to the regulatory sandboxes like Utah and soon to be Washington. That is something where we were not part of developing the sandbox itself necessarily, but we are working with Utah in collecting the data from the sandbox and providing them reports, interim reports as that pilot project continues forward to let them know, how it's going, how it can be improved, and things like that. And what the regulatory sandboxes are doing is it's allowing for what you would consider non-traditional law firms or law practices um, that maybe have a greater emphasis in technology, or they're not solely owned by attorneys, because with the rules of professional conduct right now in just about every state,
Yeah.
only attorneys can own a law firm,
Hmm.
not even a minority interest. And so this regulatory sandbox, it allows attorneys to partner with other people, whether they're business professionals, because attorneys don't learn how to be a good business person in law school. You learn about the law. And so,
So true.
um, and so you don't learn about finances and things like that. And so having somebody who can just be a partner, can really help with a law practice, help it get bigger, help it succeed. Um, or partnering with someone who is really strong in, something having to do with tech, whether it's, AI or just something else.
Hmm.
And, being able to partner with them and use the tools that this person has created to improve efficiencies. These are things that lawyers before haven't been allowed to do. And so now they're doing it. We're testing it to see, obviously making sure that the consumer is still protected. This isn't something that is, just running wild and consumers are getting harmed. But instead, making sure, yeah, this is greater efficiency. This is helping consumers. It's lowering costs, providing more access, all of that. And so that's what the sandbox um, is specifically for, and we're doing the evaluation side of that.
Hmm.
And another thing we're doing, one of our projects is called People-Centered Legal Regulation. And that is developing strategies and tools that states need to facilitate meaningful public participation in these efforts. So a lot of states are, looking into, say, the sandboxes or community justice workers or allied legal professional programs. Um, but it's always been hard, always, for courts to get the input of the everyday person.
Hmm.
Um, and so this project is to develop those tools to help states be able to reach them easier, find out, what they need, what they're looking for, whether it's, just hearing from them or having them come and actually participate and like sit on committees or things like that. And so we're doing that to really help states as they develop these initiatives.
That's actually
Yeah.
a good question because one of the things that we in Oregon are looking at is how do we measure? Like, what is our standard of success, right? And a lot of programs didn't really think about that
Mhm.
or ask that question when they rolled out programs. So I just hearing the input of, the general layperson would be super helpful in those kind of, well, how do we, where's the finish line or where, I don't think there's a finish line to be honest, but how do we measure how we're progressing, right?
Absolutely, because the reason why all these states started these initiatives from the beginning is because there are so many people that are going unrepresented, in a variety of case types, whether it's debt collection, landlord tenant, family law. And so it's broader than that, but that is one of the core reasons why states have started these initiatives. And so it makes sense that one of their main thoughts is, all right, well, to find out if this is a good program, we're going to look to see if the self-representation rate or unrepresentation rate goes down.
Mhm.
Which over time, that's absolutely a good measure. But as these programs are just starting, you're not going to see, right now we're in the 70, 80, 90% of cases have at least one party that is unrepresented.
Mhm.
You're not going to see that go down to like 30% in the first 5 years.
Mhm.
Maybe not even 10% because it's just beginning to get developed. You're just getting
Yeah.
these new professionals to come into these programs. And so say you see it go down by 5%, if that, and then program leaders or say people who are against these programs from the outset will look at it and say, this is not successful. It's only
Mhm.
5%. This has not touched, like we put in way too much work to only get 5%. And it's just looking at the picture right now as opposed to, okay, but as this develops, as this grows, as the everyday consumer learns more about
Mhm.
what these programs are and that it's an option and a viable option, then we'll really start to see that. So it is a good measure, but not necessarily, like the only measure immediately. And so, like you said, hearing from people on the ground who've gone through the process saying, I would not have been able to afford an attorney. I know that. I tried. It didn't work out. I tried going about it myself. It was too difficult.
Yeah.
I felt stuck. I found an allied legal professional. They were able to help me. It changed my life. There
Right.
are stories, there are literal stories like that.
Yeah.
And being able to hear that, I think, helps these program leaders and these states say, okay, this is working. Let's keep building.
Yeah. So, can you talk just a little bit about the community justice programs? Because I did a episode recently just talking about Alaska, and I interviewed Nikole Nelson. And just I think the concept is so new to people, but it's actually not new, right? Like, um, because we do have I look at the nurse practitioner model and
Mhm.
think, we really have missed the boat. Like this has been around for quite a few years and nobody's taken it and run with it. But I think when we think about Alaska and how they rolled out this community justice program, like uh, those workers are directly having impact in their rural communities. So I just wanted to hear your perspective and what's going on in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the community justice worker model that, as you mentioned, in Alaska, Arizona has a number of models um, that work on a few different areas of the law. And then we also see this in Delaware, in Hawaii. Um, I think it's in Utah as well, and then I'm sure I'm missing a couple other states because it's definitely growing and growing quickly. But these are professionals that, and I'm sure Nikole Nelson explained it far better than I'm going to. But these are professionals that are working within legal aid or within a nonprofit, and so they're being trained. And again, it depends on the state and the model because Alaska does things that model is a little different than some of the models in Arizona. but with Alaska specifically, like you work directly under legal aid. You're trained by legal aid attorneys. You're supervised by legal aid attorneys, and you're able to be, especially in Alaska, it's so important because it's so large and there's so many rural areas in that, in many areas you need a plane if you want to get to places like Anchorage.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not a feasible option for a lot of people. And so these people who are in these smaller communities are able to stay in these smaller communities,
Mm.
and they understand the issues of the people in their communities. And then as they're trained and supervised by these legal aid attorneys, they are able to provide the services that their communities need. And so it's a fantastic model. It works really well.
Mhm.
Um, I think one of the biggest differences with this community justice worker model and the allied legal professional model that I'm sure we're going to get into
Mhm.
is that uh, the so there's the supervision component, which some of the allied legal professional models have as well, but it's also the like the income eligibility line. And
Yeah.
so with all community justice worker models, it's not that you can help just any single person that would need the help, but they need to have, say, um, no more than 300% of the federal poverty
Right.
income
Right.
limit. And so while it is a fantastic program, it can only reach so high
Right.
in terms of the people that it can help. And that's where I see the Allied Legal Professional Program stepping in. And I don't see, one model better than the other. In my mind, none of this is competition.
Right.
It's all about, this model helps these people, this other model helps these other people. There is no one silver bullet that's going to solve all of these issues. But as we look at all these different regulatory initiatives together as a whole, they can help solve this crisis.
Yeah, and I think we've heard different, metaphors used for this, but different tools in the toolbox. Like we have to have all of these different programs because the problem is, again, so huge that one thing isn't going to solve it, right? So we have to have different programs, different resources, different legal professionals to respond to different areas or different locales or regionality, whatever, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, so let's lean into that in regards to the allied legal professionals and those licensing genres that are running out or rolling out in different jurisdictions.
Yeah, so right now there are 7 states that have a running allied legal professional program, and we call them allied legal professionals. No state call actually that's not the title for any of the states, and I'll get into the title. Um, but we call it that because almost every state calls it something different, and so we just wanted to create some sort of unifier name or title so people have an understanding that we can be talking about Oregon's legal or see Oregon's licensed paralegals or Arizona's legal paraprofessionals. But we're talking about the same thing when we say the allied legal professionals. But so there's 7 states that have these. It's I would say it's more heavily tailored toward paralegals, but it's not just someone who is a paralegal that can end up getting one of these licenses to practice law.
Hmm.
Um, there's educational requirements, and so states have developed a number of educational pathways. And one of them being, and this is why I feel like it's very tailored toward paralegals, is that in each of the states, one of the pathways is having the number of years varies by state, but say around 5 to 7 years of paralegal experience.
Hmm.
You can bypass some of the other, say, training requirements or maybe even testing requirements if you have enough experience, working in the field. And so that's why it's tailored to that. But someone who is, say, a legal secretary or hasn't gotten into the legal profession at all yet and is looking into this, You don't have to become a paralegal first.
Right.
But so these are professionals who the areas of law that are most common use in these programs: family law. Every state has added family law to it. The second most common is landlord tenant,
Hmm.
and then debt collection. And then some of the states have gone into limited jurisdiction criminal, administrative law, juvenile law,
Mm.
and a few states are starting to do things like probate and trust and that sort of area of law.
Sure.
And so you're able to, again, every state is different, so it's hard to just be very general about this. But for the most part, you can work a case from the beginning, so the initial intake, all the way up to in-court representation. And so you're able to fill out forms, help them with the forms, which is one of the biggest things that unrepresented people need help with.
Yeah.
The forms are in legalese, and so they don't even understand what it's saying, what they're supposed to be filling out. Um, and so they're able to help with that portion of it. They're able to do the communication with the opposing party. And so, say it's a family law case and they're both unrepresented. It's not always great, especially if it's a very contentious divorce,
Yeah.
to have the two parties, just talking to each other. That
Yeah.
that doesn't always work out. Um, and so having somebody be your representative and talk to, whether it's an attorney on the other side, that can be very intimidating for someone who's unrepresented,
Yeah.
or, the spouse, that goes to great lengths, even with, just trying to work through different pieces of, say, the divorce process and just trying to argue your side and why you think say should get 50% of parenting time or whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
just easy for someone who's gone through that training to be able to explain that, as opposed to a parent who just they know why, they just don't know legally why they
Yeah.
should have 50%. And then like I said, all the way up to in-court representation. In some states, that means that you can practice just like an attorney can, where you can do the questioning or cross-examining. Um, and but in most states, the representation is limited, so you can't sit with your client. Can sit with your clients at the table. You can be there to remind them, these are the arguments that you wanted to make. This is the evidence that you wanted to present.
Yeah.
Um, and because people get very flustered when you're in court for the first time,
It's intimidating.
it's very intimidating with
Oh my gosh.
right. The judge is elevated. That doesn't
Mhm.
help things.
Mm.
Um, and
And again,
yeah,
it's adversarial. It doesn't feel nice, warm and fuzzies, like all of those things. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If the other side has an attorney and then they're speaking all these legalese and making objections, and you're just like, I have no idea what I'm even supposed to be doing here.
Yeah.
You get flustered, and rightfully so.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
having someone just like be like, just be like, okay, let's just take a second. Let's
Yep.
just, take a breath, remember what we're here for, remember what we talked about. That alone is huge. But the judge can also, if the judge realizes, okay, I'm not getting a lot out of this person, the client, the litigant, I'm not, getting the information I'm needing to get to make an accurate decision. The judge can then ask the allied legal professional specific facts of the case
Yeah.
to have a better understanding of it. And so at that point, then the allied legal professional can talk to the judge, can explain the case better. Um, but that just requires the judge to make that initial um, question.
Yeah. So I just have to call out. I go to IAALS website like once or twice a week, maybe, because you have such great resources. Like your map of what things are happening where. I'm on that all the time, but it's always updating. Like every time I'm like there, I'm like the next time I go, it's like something's new. But you have drill downs into each of those states and jurisdictions. So I guess my next question is for those paralegals who may not be uh vested or understanding what's going on in their area or haven't gotten involved yet, how can they lean in and be an advocate or in their jurisdiction for what's happening?
Yeah, so first, since you brought up the our knowledge center, I will just mention some of the work that IALS has done around the Ally Legal Professional Project. Um, and because, then going to our website, it you understand a lot more of like what's there, why it's there, how it got there. But we started this project back in 2021. And it was because, there were 3 states at that time that had a program, and there were a lot of states that were very interested. There still are.
Mhm.
Um, but there were a lot of states really interested, but there was no central hub of
Yeah.
resources. They didn't really know what states had a program, what the program entailed, what other states were looking at, like what was in other states' proposals. You'd have to go, state website by state website or bar website, and it was just really hard to find. So we created a landscape study and a report for that to gather all of that research into one area. So the
Mhm.
state could say, okay, now it's outdated, but that's what our map is for. But at the time, states could say, okay, here's this. I can see every state, what they're doing, why they're doing it.
Mhm.
We then developed a framework report that has 18 recommendations. So for states that want to develop one of these programs or want to refine their program, we have 18 recommendations that go through all of it, from practice areas to attorney supervision to in-court representation to educational requirements, what those should look like based on what we know from how the programs are doing so far. We have coming out either this month or likely the beginning of next month, a reciprocity report. And so you know this because you were part of this convening. But we brought together the leaders of each of the 7 states, states programs to come and talk about reciprocity around these ALP programs. And we looked at Oregon because Oregon is the only state that actually has a comity rule. Um, and so we looked at the model that Oregon had created, and we talked through that. We looked at what the attorney reciprocity model looks like. And the whole reason around this is because, one, most states are not thinking about this at all,
Right. Right.
outside of Oregon. Um, and we already know that there have been a number of ALPs from different states reaching out to other states saying, either I'm moving to
Mhm.
that state or my attorney also works in your state. And so my attorney would like me to also have a license in your state. What are the reciprocity rules? How can I get a license there?
And
And
shocking, there aren't any yet.
right. And so they're
Yeah.
being told you have to go through the entire process that everyone else has to go through that lives in our state, which is not effective.
No.
It doesn't help the state that would gain an ALP. It doesn't help the ALP itself. And so, and states know there's just so much in developing these
Yeah.
programs that they're thinking about and having, it makes sense it wasn't a big concern at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But it makes sense for it to now be a concern. And so that's why we were doing that. And then we are now working on a title study where I mentioned um, out of the 7 states, there are 6 different titles for an ALP. The title that's used twice is a title that we already know is hated by most ALPs. So it's not, so we don't want to just go with that one because 2 states have used that one. So we're facilitating community focus groups because we know what attorneys think about the different titles and what they should be, but we haven't really heard from community members like
Yeah.
what in a title brings out like the confidence or makes you have some sort of understanding of what this is. And as you mentioned, the relation of nurse practitioners to allied legal professionals, there's one of the ideas that has come up in states is legal practitioner because people understand nurse practitioner and say,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
that correlates. I understand how it's someone who maybe is not an attorney, just like they're not a doctor, but they can do a lot of the work that I
Yeah.
need done. So we're doing that. We're talking to community members, and we're also talking to ALPs themselves to get learn about their experiences and what title they feel like would be, best explain the work that they do. So hopefully we'll bring these 7 state leaders back together and come together on a title. We'll see how it goes.
That would be
Um,
great. I,
yeah, yeah.
I think we spent the almost as much time talking about the name as we did the requirements for being eligible in Oregon. So so it's no joke. It doesn't make sense. Do you feel like I think one of the things that I really struggle with is a lot of these groups don't actually include paralegals in the committees that are researching or developing the programs, which I think is a miss. But is there a recommendation from you about how they can get involved?
Yeah, so I mean, it is a huge miss. Thankfully, with more of these programs as they come along and their committees or commissions are being created, they're learning from others' mistakes and realizing and also, I'm speaking to people all the time when they're first starting to, say, okay, I think we want to look into this. And we're developing our commission now, and asking for guidance on, okay, well, how do we do that? Or like, who do we involve and things like that. I always say, involve a paralegal. Paralegal is, again, not the only person that you're reaching out to for this, to become an ALP, but they're one of the main ones or the main one. And so have them be part of this, understand really like what paralegals already know. So
Mm,
you're not making the requirements so large, so great
yeah,
that
they
they're
can't
like,
reach it. Yeah.
they can't reach it, and they're like, I've already done so much of this in my paralegal studies.
Yeah.
And so I'll just say that I always try and tell them have paralegals involved. But so for paralegals, it obviously just depends on what state you're in because that then depends on where they're at in the process.
Yeah.
States that already have a program, um, they usually still have a committee or a commission that oversees the program itself. A lot of them do have somebody who's either like an active ALP or a paralegal as part of it, but it doesn't hurt to reach out to that
Yeah.
committee or commission and say, I'm a paralegal. I'm interested in providing, my experiences of what I've seen in the real world. And more likely than not, they
They'll be
they
receptive.
will want to hear from
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether it's here, join our committee, or yes, let's set up a call so the two of us can talk about this and we can put what you've learned from your experiences into the work that we're doing. If your state doesn't already have a program, but say they have a commission that's looking into this, again, these are usually not too difficult to find. And I mean, reach out to me, please. If you want to find out if your state is doing anything about it, like you mentioned with our knowledge center and the map we have, it shows what states are looking into
Yeah.
this. Um, and also just go on IAALS website and reach out to me, email me, and I will be happy to talk with you and reach out to people in that state and find out how you can get involved.
Love
But yeah,
that.
if they have a commission, again, they may either be like, well, we already have a few people with the paralegal perspective, or if they don't, they'll say, most likely they'll say, yeah, we like that's an oversight. Let's
Yep.
add someone um who has that experience since that's who we're targeting. And then lastly, I'll say there's if there isn't a committee or a commission yet, there's very likely an access to justice committee or something similar to that. Almost every state has some sort of committee that has a title that relates to access to justice. And so, reaching out to someone there, again, reach out to me and I'll reach out to them. But you can say, because of my experience in such and such state that we're in, and seeing how much they could really use a program like this, whether it's community justice worker or a regulatory sandbox or allied legal professional, this is why I think you should start looking into this, and I
Yeah.
would love to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I'll say educate the public.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Yes. Preach.
because yeah, there are like the public has no idea, the
None.
vast majority of the public, no idea that all of these initiatives are being looked at or even exist in a state. And there are so many people that are like, I can't afford an attorney. Attorney's my only option.
Right.
So I'm just gonna go about it myself and just hope for the best.
Yep.
But the more that we can just let the public know, whether it's, that state itself has a program or other states have it. So maybe like you start calling, whether it's your representatives or the people who are in charge of these committees and saying,
It's a problem, or we need to,
this is
yeah,
a
get the
problem.
word out.
We need to do something about it. The more, I have no problem with um, getting communities to pressure states to start looking into this more if
Yeah.
they're not,
Love
because
it.
they need to.
Yeah. All right, Michael, this has been such a great conversation. I just have one more, and then we'll let you get back to your life. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know about in regards to this access to justice space and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, hopefully you've learned from what I've been saying that IALS is working hard to create opportunities for paralegals and broader to play additional roles in providing legal services more than what has really ever been allowed throughout the United States. And we're working to develop effective messaging for regulatory innovation leaders, like that they can use to educate the public as well, but we're always open to hearing about what else we can be doing or should be doing or how we can be more effective with what we're doing. Like if you go onto our website and you look at the Allied Legal Professional Knowledge Center, you say this map is actually kind of confusing because of this reason, or I would love if you had something that we're developing is like um, a like common questions or misunderstandings about these programs,
Right.
about, like, are they actually effective or do they cause harm to the public? Maybe, you feel like that should be added to our work that's not there, and that would be
Sure.
more effective messaging. Reach out to me.
Yep.
And if you want to play a role in your state or in the national movement, I'm more than happy to talk with you and find a way to get you involved because we need as many people as possible.
Love that. I love the advocacy. I love the leaning in and having people, offer those suggestions. And I so appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and walk us through all this and all your advocacy work. Love it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Linda. I mean, you are a huge part in all of this from Oregon and beyond. So, thank you for all your work too.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Want to find out more and cannot wait until the next episode? Check out the links and reports included in this program by going to the Paralegals on Fire with Ann Pearson podcast or paralegalbootcamp.com. See you next time.